All right.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us this morning. I'll turn it right over to our new director of the Office of Cannabis Management, Erin DuPree. She'll give some brief remarks and then we'll open it up for questions. So if you use the hand raise tool on the top right-hand corner of your screen, we'll take questions in the order they come in. Just limit yourself to one question and a single on-topic follow-up so we can get to as many of you as possible. Thanks again. And with that, I'll turn it over to Erin.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to be here. As Claire said, my name is Erin DuPree. I am the first director of the new Office of Cannabis Management. I'm sure you all have a lot of questions, but let me give you a little bit of background on myself. I am a born and raised Minnesotan. I've been doing business here for the better part of 20 years as an entrepreneur and consultant. I've also worked and done consulting work and contract work in other legal states, so California, Colorado, Michigan, Illinois, New Jersey, but more locally, I have owned and operated a low-dose hemp business called Lunacy that I'm actually in the process of selling due to this appointment. I also have a consulting service that helps entrepreneurs in the cannabis space move forward. That is also being dissolved and given to another consultant due to this appointment. But I'm really excited about this, as I'm sure you guys are as well. One of the things that was really apparent in my family is that my grandfather, who was actually the representative for the 63rd district back in the 1950s, which was Becker County, has instilled in all of us that you come out of the private sector to serve your state and your community with the knowledge that you have, and I'm really driven by that. I'm also really excited to create an industry for Minnesota that is based on craft, right? We want craft grows, we want micro and meso businesses to be the heart of this industry. I really want Minnesotans to know that I am here for them and for businesses. As we all know, it's going to take a heave-ho to get this going. I'm excited to get to work, and I hope you guys are all excited to meet me.
Thanks, Erin. Peter, looks like you had your hand up first. Go ahead.
Hello, I'm Peter Callahan. I work for MinPost. My question is about the governor probably had two ways he could go. He could go to the industry, or he could go to someone with sort of a governmental, I hate to say, bureaucratic background. He went with the former. But the job description said they were looking for 8 years of professional experience in regulatory oversight, public administration, business, or law enforcement. So I'm curious as to how you compensate for the fact that you may know the industry, but you don't know the bureaucracy and creating a new state agency. So I'm curious as to how you will navigate that.
Yeah, so my consulting and contract work in other legal states has made me familiar with what they typically do for regulatory, how they're handling bureaucracy in other states. So even though I don't technically have experience with that here in Minnesota, I do in other states. Not to mention the fact that because I don't have a background in that, I don't have any baggage. I'm coming here with an open mind and ready to work with everybody.
Tori, go ahead.
Yeah, first, Claire, sorry to break the rules, Claire, but I have a quick clarifying question first, just like fact checking, clarifying. So, Director, you're the second consultancy listed in the press release. That's also a cannabis. You're advising specifically cannabis businesses in that role, not any sort of business.
No, right now we are just focusing on cannabis businesses, but in a previous life, yeah, I have done consulting for just about every industry there is.
For other businesses too. Okay, cool. I wanted to clarify that. And I was just going to kind of ask, I know you haven't officially started yet, but in thinking about this job and learning about it, like what, I guess, in terms of what's next, like there's a lot of rulemaking, a lot of regulatory work to do to set up this marketplace. Like what can we expect to be some of the first things happening now that you're getting in place and building this agencies? Like what's going to come first? What's the order of operations here?
Yeah, for sure. So the first thing that we need to tackle is people, right? The agency, we need about 150 people to be able to make this run correctly. Last Friday, they actually already released 9 key positions, for which we already have almost 250 applicants. So the first order is going to be getting those key positions filled and filling the positions in the advisory board.
Winter Kiefer.
Sure. Hi, I'm with Twin Cities Business, and I was curious because of your background, particularly in the hemp-derived space, if you can tell me a little bit about how both that translates and doesn't translate to the adult use market. It's very different. Obviously, we've federal legalization of hemp, and also there might be a challenge between hemp-derived THC business owners when the adult use market comes into play, and how those two businesses, might either create competition for each other or work off of each other moving forward. Can you tell me a little bit about your perspective on that?
Yeah, so the low dose hemp derived market has actually been really good for Minnesota as we lead up to legalization. I think it's been helping make sure that there's access, which is important. But as somebody who's owned a business doing that specifically, I have a lot of personal opinions about that. But in reality, I really need to get my feet a little bit more wet before I get too deep in the weeds on that. There are a lot of things at play here, but I definitely support the low dose hemp market, like I said, because it does provide access in a time where we're waiting to really ramp up and get some licenses and all the policy and rulemaking going.
Tom, you're up.
Good morning. There was a lot of surprise among people who were excited about this law when it went into effect on August 1st, that they couldn't buy cannabis products on August 1st because there are no licensed sellers. And even though it had been well publicized, it'll be 18 months or so. How confident are you that that deadline can be met, the roughly 18 months? And is it possible maybe it could even be done sooner? Or have you gotten your hands around that yet? Again, understanding you haven't started yet.
Yeah, that's correct. I haven't technically started yet. I will let you know that if you look at other states from the day that they made it legal to when the first dispensary opened, for most states, it's sitting between 2 and 3 years. I don't see any reason why we won't be able to meet or exceed those expectations. I believe that we'll be leveraging technology to make this an easier transition. We don't have to reinvent the wheel here. We're lucky as the 23rd state to legalize. We can look back on the other 22 states, look and see what's been good and what's not been good, and use that to help create policy and rulemaking here.
And just as a quick follow-up, did you say your father or was it a grandfather was in the state legislature?
Yes, my grandfather.
Tell us more about that, what his name was and how long he served.
Yep, his name was Andrew Wambach, and he served for 2 terms. My family is a farming family, and so he came out of his farming business to serve his community and his state. Quick funny story, my father remembers the first time that the phone rang at their house in Monoman because the farmhouse didn't have anything like that, and he remembers looking at his mom and going, "Do we answer it? What do we do with this?" One of my favorite stories from his time as representative.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Tom. Esme, you're up. You're muted.
Sorry about that. Hey, Esme Murphy with WCCO. One question and then a quick follow-up. First of all, you're coming from the small business background. I mean, you're going to be in charge of a organization that's going to be overseeing a multi-million, tens of millions of dollars industry. And with that comes so many concerns about, fraud or, impropriety or whatever. I mean, how are you going to translate your background as a small business person into such a huge job that for at least this state, it is new?
Yeah, for sure. So let's not mince words. We know that within the first year of legalization, Minnesota is going to do about $1 billion in revenue in this industry. But let's also look at the fact that this is a giant startup. And I have done no less than a dozen of those. My experience does translate. The people that we're going to be working with are people that I already know. The industry itself, I'm well versed in. I understand what they're already working towards. So my background definitely fits. My favorite part of business is the startup point anyway, right? This is the part that I enjoy the most and the one that I have the most experience in. And I actually believe that's part of what helped me get this position.
If I could just ask a quick follow-up. Just for the public, I think there's so much confusion about what people can do or can't do. For instance, there's even a clause in the Constitution that talks about people being allowed to peddle the products of a farm or garden that they've grown without obtaining a license. People are saying that applies to marijuana. How are you going to go about, I don't know if you have any comment on that, but how are you going to go about sort of clarifying things for people as we go forward over the next 18 months?
Yeah, for sure. But we know that one of the first things we need to do is educate the general public. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and a lot of that has been because they haven't had this position filled, right? This is a big undertaking. We're creating an entire new agency here, right? So there has to be some give and take from the public knowing that we're working on it. We're going to get there, and we're going to educate Minnesotans so that they can make the best decision for themselves.
Any comment at all on that clause in the Constitution that seems to suggest farmers can sell what they grow without a license?
Yeah, I haven't actually officially started yet. I don't start until the first week of October. So let's wait until I get my feet a little bit more wet for that one.
Very fair. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Esme. John Croman.
You're muted, John.
Nope. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. I heard recently that we're in the process of or have already hired a licensing contractor for the Office of Cannabis Management. And I'm assuming this is an administrative function that the third-party contractor won't be making the decisions about who gets licensed. Is that correct?
So, John, as I said earlier, I have not gotten my feet wet. This is just an introduction. Technically, I don't start until October. I'm still really focused on making sure that the sale of my businesses go through and they're dissolved. I feel like that's something that I'll be able to comment on later.
I guess my follow-up question is, as you understand it, does the law allow just a limited number of licenses in all these different categories of licenses? Or will we reach this scarcity point where people will feel like they've been excluded, and how you'll kind of resolve some of those issues?
Hey, we know that there's a lot of questions around that law and what licensing looks like and really how many we're going to be giving out. But I'll say this, we need to do research and figure out how big the market is before I can even comment on that.
But you're going into it with a directive, I guess, that this is going to be a homegrown industry in Minnesota, not something.
Yeah, for sure. The bill talked about the fact that it's important to make it a craft grow, make it a craft industry, and I'm committed to that as well. Micro and meso businesses are the heartbeat of most industries, and I don't see that cannabis would be any different.
Thank you.
Thanks, John. Corin. You're on mute. And maybe having some connection issues. We can come back to you. Let's go to Brian.
It's Brian Bax from NPR. I understand that you met with some key legislators last night about your role, and I'm wondering what signals you got about the amount of independence you'll have in this high attention area, or whether you think you'll have a lot of lawmakers trying to be cooks in the kitchen here.
Yeah, I did meet with them last evening, but again, it was just an introductory call, really to just meet each other, have some general chatter. I will say that it went well, and I was a little starstruck as somebody who has been following the bill from the background for a while. It was great to actually meet the people that put in the work to get it done. But in reality, we didn't get into any nitty-gritty.
Corin, do you want to put your question in the chat, and then Tori will end with you.
Do you want me to go now, Claire, while he's writing, or wait for him to write this question in the chat?
We'll end with Corin. You go, Tori.
Okay, Tori with Axios again. Speaking of those cooks in the kitchen, we're expecting kind of some tweaks, some cleanup legislation next year. Are there areas or issues of the bill that you have already identified that you will be asking the legislature to make, that you think should be made, like changes that you think should be made in the law itself at this time?
Yeah, have reading through the law, I think we all have opinions on, what could change, what could be better, but this isn't a one-man show. My opinion definitely matters, but it's not end game. So as we get further in, but right now that's kind of up in the air.
Just reading the chat here. Erin, I don't know if you know the answer to this. Will OCM get its own building, or will you be housed in one of the existing state agency quarters buildings?
Yeah, in the interim, we will be housed at the Ag building. Eventually, I think there's some chatter that we'll get our own building, but nothing is set in stone yet.
All right, last one with Peter.
Hi, can you talk about your experience with the medical? I just assumed that you were a medical marijuana patient, given your description from 2015 forward that you were you used autoimmune disorder. Can you talk about your experience with medical and whether you think there will be a future for a medical program that's separate from a recreational program?
Yeah, well, I think that a medical program is important, especially what we have here, because it's not taxed, right? We're not going to tax people for medicine that helps them feel better. My personal experience, no, I do not have a medical card in this state. And that's really all I'm going to say about that. This isn't about me. This is about Minnesotans and Minnesota businesses.
Okay, thanks so much, everyone. Look forward to talking more about this
Ryan,
when Erin starts. Erin, your early read on testing capacity and whether that will be a government-driven process or contracted to private vendors in the landscape for other states.
Yeah, again, that's a little early to talk about that. You know, I still have another 10 days here before I start, so let's table that and talk about it later.
Okay, thanks so much, Erin. Thanks everyone for joining us.
Thank you all for
Reach
your
out
time.
with any other questions.